All right, so ready to put on our detective hats? Today we're taking a deep dive into how to prepare for an insurance fraud investigator interview. It's a fascinating world where every claim's a potential puzzle and you get to piece together the truth. Yeah, exactly. And you know the best part. You're not just protecting companies from those fraudulent claims, but you're also making sure that the honest policyholders get what they deserve.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So to guide us through this deep dive, we've got a couple of key sources. The Career Guide, Insurance Fraud Investigator, gives us a solid overview of the role itself. And we'll be pulling some real-world interview questions from the Interview Guide, Insurance Fraud Investigator, and Interview Questions Repository over at RoleCatcher.
Our mission today, to equip you with the knowledge and the strategies to absolutely ace that interview.
Exactly. So let's jump right in. The Career Guide really lays out what these investigators do, right? They're poring over claims for everything, products, premiums, you name it.
Oh, and even those new customer applications. Yeah, it's about finding those subtle hints that something might be off.
And that's where those analytical skills are so key. You're not just skimming the surface. You're digging deep into data, conducting interviews.
Yeah, putting together a story like a financial detective.
Exactly.
And speaking of digging deep, the guide also emphasizes how important tech skills are these days in this field.
Oh, absolutely. With the rise of all those digital transactions and those online claims, investigators need to be comfortable with all sorts of things, data analysis tools, specific software, and AI is becoming huge in this field.
So if you're already comfortable with spreadsheets or you got a knack for spotting patterns, you're off to a great start. Now let's get to the heart of it. Tackling those interview questions, one of the first ones you'll likely hear is, tell us about your experience investigating insurance fraud cases. Now, what if you haven't actually worked in insurance fraud before?
This is your chance to shine. Even if your background isn't directly related, you can still highlight those times when you had to analyze information, solve problems, or even maybe catch someone in a little white lie.
Oh, that's a great point.
Those are all valuable skills.
Like maybe you worked in retail and spotted a fraudulent return.
Exactly.
Or maybe you were part of a student group and you had to uncover some budget discrepancies.
Yeah. It's all about showing that you can think critically and spot those inconsistencies.
So even if it's not specifically insurance fraud, if you got examples of those skills, bring them to the table.
And don't forget, structure your answer in a way that highlights your process.
Right. So walk them through it.
Yeah. What steps did you take? What evidence did you gather? How did you reach those conclusions?
A great point. Now, let's say they follow up with a tougher one. Like, what if you suspect fraud, but you've got limited evidence? How would you proceed?
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a little tricky.
You really got to show that you're resourceful, you know how to gather information strategically. Mention things like conducting surveillance, interviewing witnesses.
Oh, and public records databases. Those are gold mines.
Exactly. It's like building a case piece by piece.
Now, shifting gears a bit, another common question you'll probably get is, what software or tools are you familiar with that could be useful in fraud investigations?
This is where you get to show off those tech skills, Mention any data analysis or investigative software you've used, even if it wasn't specifically for fraud investigations.
Yeah, Excel, data visualization tools, anything that shows you can work with information effectively.
Exactly.
And don't be afraid to mention that you're eager to learn new tools because, let's be honest, the insurance industry is constantly evolving.
All the time.
So being adaptable and a quick learner is a huge plus.
Absolutely.
Okay, now for a question that can feel a little intimidating, how do you ensure that your investigations are compliant with insurance regulations and laws?
Oh, this one is all about showcasing your professionalism and your ethics.
Yeah, big time.
You want to demonstrate that you understand how important it is to follow procedures, to maintain confidentiality, and to uphold the highest standards of integrity.
So be ready to talk about some specific regulations or laws, right? The ones relevant to insurance fraud in your area.
Yeah.
And maybe even a time when you had to navigate a complex ethical situation in a previous role.
That's a good one. And remember, even if you haven't actually worked as an investigator before, you can still highlight your commitment to ethical conduct.
Right. Maybe you had to report an unethical coworker, or you stood up for something you believed in, even when it was difficult.
Yeah, those are great examples.
Okay, here comes another one that might seem a little tricky. How do you stay up to date with the latest trends and developments in insurance fraud investigation?
Oh, this is where you show them you're a lifelong learner. Always curious about those latest advancements.
The field's always changing, right?
It's a fast-paced field. You can mention specific industry publications, professional organizations like the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud.
Ooh, or online forums where investigators share their knowledge.
There are tons of resources out there.
Heck, even listening to podcasts like ours shows that you're actively seeking information and trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
Now, for a bit of a curveball, they might throw a scenario-based question at you, like, give me an example of a time when you had to analyze a large amount of data to identify a trend or pattern.
This is where you get to showcase those analytical skills we talked about.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be directly related to fraud.
Yeah, maybe you had to analyze customer data in a previous job, to identify buying patterns or to predict sales trends.
Right, or even something like analyzing data from a research project or volunteer work could be relevant.
Yeah, anything where you had to really dig into the data.
The key is to walk them through your process, how you approached the task, the tools you used, and what you learned from it all.
And don't forget to connect it back to the role of an insurance fraud investigator. Explain how those skills would be valuable in identifying those fraudulent claims.
Okay, last one for this part. It's a bit more personal. What motivates you to pursue a career as an insurance fraud investigator?
This one is all about letting your passion shine through.
So, what drew you to this field?
Yeah. Is it the challenge of solving those puzzles? The desire to protect people from financial harm? Be genuine and let that enthusiasm show?
And this might be a good time to mention something specific that you learned from that career guide. Insurance fraud investigator we talked about.
Yeah, good idea.
Maybe a statistic about the impact of insurance fraud or a particular type of fraud that you find fascinating.
Exactly. Show them you've done your research and that you're genuinely interested.
Now, preparing for all these questions can be a little overwhelming, especially if you're juggling multiple applications and interviews.
Oh, for sure.
That's where a tool like RoleCatcher can be a game changer, right?
Absolutely.
Those AI-powered features can help you tailor your answers to specific job roles and even get personalized feedback on your delivery and content.
It's like having a virtual interview coach right in your pocket.
Yeah, so much easier than carrying around a real person.
Much easier.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here in this first part, but there's still so much more to explore. We'll be back in part 2 to dive into some more advanced interview questions and how RoleCatcher can help you craft those perfect responses.
Welcome back. Last time we covered some of those basic interview questions you might encounter when you're going for an insurance fraud investigator position.
Right. But now it's time to step it up a notch, right? Get into some of the more challenging scenarios you might face.
That's right. Let's say you're in the hot seat and the interviewer says, imagine you're investigating a claim where the policyholder's story just feels a little off, but you don't have any concrete evidence of fraud yet. What would be some red flags you'd look for?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. You have to trust your gut, but you also need to be able to back it up.
Exactly. It's all about those subtle inconsistencies, those things that often slip through the cracks.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, a sudden change in the policyholder's spending habits after the incident, that's always a red flag. Or discrepancies in their timeline of events. The story keeps changing a little bit each time they tell it.
Or even unusual social media activity, right? Like suddenly posting pictures from a lavish vacation after claiming a major financial loss.
Exactly. It's not just about looking at facts and figures. You're also assessing credibility and using your intuition.
It's like being a human lie detector.
Yeah, kind of.
You're picking up on those nonverbal cues and those gut feelings that something just isn't adding up.
Absolutely. And that actually ties into another question you might get. How would you approach interviewing a witness who you suspect might be withholding information?
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one. It's like a delicate dance, isn't it?
Exactly. You need to build rapport, ask those open-ended questions, and really listen for those hesitations or inconsistencies in their responses.
Be persuasive, but also observant.
Right. You got to strike that balance.
Okay, let's shift gears for a sec and talk about technology. So imagine they ask, describe a situation where you had to use technology to solve a problem or investigate an issue.
Perfect. This is where you get to highlight those tech skills, even if they weren't directly used for fraud investigations before.
Okay, so like using a spreadsheet to analyze data, creating a presentation to explain your findings, or maybe even building a basic website or app.
Exactly. All great examples. And even if it wasn't specifically related to fraud, you can always connect it back to the role.
Right, like maybe you use social media to research a topic for a school project or something.
Yeah, that shows, how to use online resources to find information.
Resourcefulness is a key skill for an investigator.
Absolutely. Now, they might even ask about your thoughts on artificial intelligence. What are your thoughts on the use of AI in fraud detection? How comfortable are you working with AI-powered tools?
This is where you can really show them that you're up to date on the latest industry trends.
Exactly. You can mention how AI can analyze huge amounts of data to find patterns and anomalies that humans might miss, which makes it super valuable for investigators.
And you could even bring up RoleCatcher as an example.
Perfect example.
It's a great way to show that you're not only familiar with the concept of AI, but you're also aware of its practical applications.
Exactly.
Sure.
And it helps you prepare for this very interview.
Okay, now for a question that we all dread. What are your weaknesses?
Ugh, yeah. This one can be tough, but the key is to be honest and show that you're self-aware.
Don't try to pretend you're perfect. No one's buying it.
Right. Choose a weakness that isn't crucial to the role of an investigator and then explain how you're working to improve it.
So maybe you're a bit too detail-oriented
Yeah.
and sometimes get bogged down in the minutia,
Yeah.
but you're practicing time management techniques to become more efficient.
Or maybe you're a little shy in group settings, so you're taking a public speaking course to become more confident.
It's all about showing that you're committed to growth, both personally and professionally.
Exactly. And you can even spin those weaknesses into strengths.
Oh, that's good.
You know, that detail-oriented nature might make you a meticulous investigator.
True.
And that shyness could mean you're a patient and observant interviewer.
I like that. Okay, so now for another classic. Tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult person or situation. How did you handle it?
Ooh, this one's all about showing off your interpersonal skills and conflict resolution abilities.
Right, so pick a situation that's relevant to a workplace environment.
Exactly. And focus on how you remain professional and diplomatic throughout the ordeal.
So maybe you had a disagreement with a colleague on a project, or you had to deal with a demanding customer?
Yeah, the key is to highlight the steps you took to resolve the situation calmly and effectively.
It's not about placing blame or dwelling on the negative.
Right. You want to show how you navigated the situation with grace and kept things professional.
Okay, now for a question that really tests your critical thinking skills. If you could implement one change to improve the way insurance fraud is investigated, what would it be?
That's a great question. It gives you a chance to show that you understand the industry and that you're thinking outside the box.
It's about being innovative.
Exactly. You could suggest a new technology or tool, a change in regulations, or even a more collaborative approach between different agencies and stakeholders.
It shows that you're not just thinking about getting the job, you're thinking about how to make a real impact in the field.
And it shows that you're passionate about fighting fraud.
Exactly. Now remember, all of these questions are opportunities to showcase your unique skills and experiences.
Right, and this is where RoleCatcher can really help you prepare.
Yeah, their AI-powered interview practice tool can help you fine-tune those responses and get personalized feedback based on the specific requirements of the job.
It's like having a secret weapon in your arsenal.
Okay, we've gone through a lot in this part, but we're not done yet. We'll be back for the final part to wrap up with some overall tips for success in your insurance fraud investigator interview. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into becoming an insurance fraud investigator. We've talked about the role itself, those tricky interview questions.
Yeah, and how to use those AI tools to your advantage.
But before we wrap things up, let's revisit the career guide for a sec. Remember how it mentioned that job growth in this field is expected to be around 5% between 2019 and 2029?
Yeah, that's pretty solid. It means this career path is in demand.
Exactly. So how do you make sure you stand out from the crowd and show those potential employers that you're the one they want?
Well, one thing that always impresses interviewers is when a candidate is genuinely passionate and curious about the field.
Right. It's not just about saying, oh, yeah, I'm interested. You got to show it.
Exactly. Do your research, stay up to date on what's happening in the industry, and be ready to talk about what specifically excites you about insurance fraud investigation.
Maybe you're fascinated by the psychology of those fraudsters, What makes them tick? Or maybe you're intrigued by how data analytics and AI are being used to uncover those complex schemes.
Yeah. Sharing those interests not only shows that you're enthusiastic, but also that you're a lifelong learner who's committed to staying ahead of the curve.
Now, remember all that talk about tech skills. Well, it's not just about rattling off a list of software you're familiar with.
No, it's about demonstrating your ability to learn and adapt to new technologies. The insurance industry is always changing, so being open to new tools and approaches is essential.
Exactly. So when you're talking about your tech skills, Highlight your willingness to embrace those challenges and keep expanding your knowledge.
And don't forget those all-important soft skills.
And yeah.
Communication, collaboration, problem solving, all those things.
Right, because insurance fraud investigation often involves working with all sorts of people. Policyholders, witnesses, law enforcement, other investigators.
Exactly. So you need to be able to talk about your experiences working in teams, communicating effectively, and navigating those sometimes tricky interpersonal dynamics.
Yeah, let's talk about something that can be a little intimidating for some people. Networking.
Oh yeah, networking. It's crucial in any field, but especially in a specialized area like insurance fraud investigation.
Yeah, attending those industry events, joining professional organizations, connecting with people online can open doors to opportunities you might never even have known about.
And it's not just about finding jobs. Networking is also about learning from others, sharing insights, and building relationships that can support your career as you grow.
So make an effort to connect with people in the field, ask questions, and be genuinely interested in learning from their experiences.
It can make a huge difference.
Now let's circle back to RoleCatcher one last time.
Yeah.
Remember those AI-powered features. They can be a real game changer for interview prep.
Oh, absolutely. The personalized feedback, the practice questions tailored to specific roles, the insights into what employers are looking for, all of that can give you a serious edge.
Like having a personal coach in your pocket.
So as you gear up for that interview, remember, you've got this. You've learned a ton about the role, you've practiced answering tough questions, and you've got RoleCatcher in your corner.
Go out there, be confident, be yourself, and let that passion for uncovering the truth shine through. You'll do great.
It's a fascinating field with its challenges and rewards. We're excited for you to embark on this journey.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into becoming an insurance fraud investigator. We hope you feel prepared and ready to ace that interview and launch a successful career in this exciting field.